Rita, very much for a job well done on behalf of Backus-Page, and all of your years of commitment don't go unnoticed. Thank you so much. Before I really get carried away here tonight, I was going to speak about windmills, but I don't think I But I thought maybe I'd give you a history on windmills, but I won't do that either. I actually did study windmills. It's the hot topic in Dunwich Township right now, but I have two sides sitting in this audience, and I don't want to split them apart, so we're going to continue to have fun. The whole purpose of this evening, of course, is seniors and the legacy that they leave behind for your local community. So before I get into the history of Backus-Page, I want to have a toast. I want everybody to stand up, and I want to salute and toast our seniors. Our seniors have a keen understanding of local community, more than many of the young adults do today. So raise your glass line to the toast to our seniors. Thank you. Maybe seated. Well, I've been involved with Backus-Page for many years. In fact, Karen just asked me at the table how many years I've been involved. Well, we've been incorporated for 20, and in those 20 years I've been involved for 18 of them, or 18 and a half, somewhere in there. Prior to that, I was deeply involved in the organizational process of getting us incorporated, making the agreements with the ministry, the OHS, the Ontario Historical Society at the time, with our local municipality. We had to have 5 partners involved at that time to get us to that place. That took about 5 years, and I'm sure Ann, we're going to ask Ann to speak in a few moments, who was so instrumental in all that work that I can't begin to even understand in my young age at that time how much work it was. But first of all, I want to honor some other folks today. We have a rich history in students working at the Backus-Page, rich history. Many of our students have got their work experience at Backus-Page for 1 or 2 or 3 summers even, through different grants that we received. Many of these students have gone on to become very successful in their careers: teachers, lawyers, masters in history, degrees in history of different kinds. Many of them have really succeeded in many different aspects of life, and we're very proud of that at Backus-Page House. In fact, it has sort of become a tradition of ours to seek out students that we feel will have a long-standing commitment in their education. So to go along with that, there were a lot of key people that I want to mention tonight that helped nurture students along in their education in one form or another. And we really took pride in the fact that it was self-development. They had to self-learn. They had to manage themselves. And we really felt that was essential back in the early years of Backus-Page. So I'd like to recognize, first of all, one of our founding members, or the founding member of Tryconnell Heritage Society, was Duncan C. McKillop. He's not here tonight. His health is poor, and Duncan C. McKillop was one of the first people who actually introduced the student process. We're very proud of what Duncan has done for Backus-Page. James Hughes was another one in the first years when we had students that was very instrumental in helping Backus-Page and moving us forward in an appropriate way that would help benefit history, the history that Tryconnell has to offer. The next one is my wife, Eva. You stand up. She worked tirelessly for a number of years. For very little remuneration, because we believed in what the organization had to offer. And literally she would drive there every day and spend an hour with the students to give them their responsibilities for the week and set the guidelines. The next was Lynn McCann. Lynn, if you could stand. She did it for a couple of years. Huge time in nurturing that process as well. Lita West was another one. Lita, she was so and Valerie Stone. Valerie, could you stand, please? Without the efforts of these people, we would have not pushed the Backus-Page to the position that it is today. Endless volunteer hours. We can't even begin to describe the number of hours that these people put in. Not only did they put in time, they had to do the research and the study that would advance or help advance the cause of Tryconnell Heritage Society. So I commend all these people. I hope I haven't missed anybody. But it was a different time for Backus-Page at that time. One of our students is here this evening, one of our very first students that was involved with Backus-Page. And I'm going to ask her to come forward, Trisha Corneil. At the time, she was Patricia Hens. It took me a long time to change that, but we knew her as Patricia Hens. She was one of our first students who really did a lot of research and study for us at Backus-Page, and she was so instrumental in the processes. One thing I will say, Trish Corneil today, I still look at her documents that she produced 20 years ago. She was so far ahead of what we could do as Backus-Page, and I think anybody who was an employee manager at that time knew this girl had something special. If we could listen to her, we were probably not ready for it at the time, but if we could listen to her, we would have advanced the cause that much faster. So Trish, I'm going to ask you to come up and say a few words.
Introduction, Henry, that means a lot to me. Thank you so much. And here I am, I'm a litigator and used to arguing in court almost every day, and I'm actually quite nervous. Speaking in front of all of you, I had to write down some notes to get me through this evening. So Henry had called me a few days ago and asked me to come up and talk to all of you. So I've had a few days to reflect and think about what I'm going to say. And I have to express to you all that when I was pondering what I was going to say, to you a whole host of very wonderful and very awesome memories came flooding back. Working as a student down at Backus-Page and with all of the great people that were on the board at the time was a wonderful, wonderful experience for me. I learned so much from it. I made so many good friends, lifelong friends. It was a wonderful opportunity for me, and I thank you for giving me that opportunity very early on. I remember when I was first hired as a student going down to that house, and it was a bit of a mess. There was brush, I think, grown up around 3 sides of that house, almost up to the windows. And I remember that first summer actually clearing brush and having to go out and buy a pair of steel-toed boots to go and work at the Backus-Page house. But it was still very rewarding work. And I remember even my dad, and my mom and dad are here tonight, I remember my dad coming down and helping me, not getting paid, but helping me clear brush and dig stumps out, and kind of got a 2-for-1 deal there, I think, for a few weeks, but I didn't mind it. It was good work. We were outdoors, getting fresh air, getting lots of exercise, and it was very rewarding, fulfilling work. And I remember right from the very start, Henry, that the board was true to form. I remember how they approached the restoration of that home and grounds with a genuineness and wanting to be just so true to the history of that property. And I remember you replacing broken panes of glass that were in those 12 pane windows with historical glass, not going out and finding some glass that you could do the quick fix on, going out and finding glass from the 1850s and seeing the imperfections and the bubbles in that glass and making sure that it looked like that house needed to look. And I remember that genuinely and truly, and how much effort and work went into that restoration project right from the very start. I remember also being a student down there, and I remember just some days waiting so bad for a tourist to stop or a car to stop, because there was days that would go by where we would have nobody come, and then when we finally got somebody to stop, we just felt so lucky. We would go and we would grab them, and we were like, yes, we're open, don't go, park your car, I'll give you a tour. And even wandering down to the park some days, because we would see people stop at the park, but not at the house, and going and grabbing them and trying to pull them in and give them a tour of the house and explain what we were trying to do to generate that initial interest. And I remember some naysayers back in the day, and I remember it was very hard for me, but I did it. I did bite my tongue. Some people that would come through and kind of hum and haw and wonder, think, oh, I don't really want my tax dollars going to this. But I remember snagging some of those naysayers in the end, because I remember them coming and sitting on the board later on. I shall not name any names, but I remember them coming on board later on. That was a really good feeling. And I remember having no air or heat in that home, freezing my little butt off in the early days of May when I started, and the lath and plaster falling off in that house. And the roof was an absolute in tatters, and I remember at the last minute a big donation from the Simpson family. I can't remember, Henry, you'll probably recall who that was, giving a $10,000 donation so that we could replace that roof right off the bat and preserve that home so that it didn't sustain any further damage, and that being a godsend to all of us. I also remember having to take care of the park, Johnny Pierce Provincial Park, and along with the Ministry of Natural Resources, and working with them closely to maintain the park. And that was fun. It was great fun. I remember getting to do a lot of research, and as a history, I majored in history, and I was a bit of a history geek, as my friends would say. But nothing could have been better for me, researching local history. I did my thesis on Colonel Thomas Talbot. I loved every minute of that, and writing articles for it was the Dutton Advance at the time. I remember the Moores ran the Dutton Advance, and going and submitting my articles and them being very receptive to that, and printing them on a weekly basis. And that was just so much fun for me. I remember also getting charged with the task of actually traveling to different museums across southwestern Ontario to meet with the different cultural managers and the curators there, and just picking their brains and learning so much from everybody, learning what they were doing for fundraising, what they were doing for advertising, what they were doing to get out the word, how they managed their museum collections. And being able to take that all in and go back to the board and give them those ideas and see those wheels start to turn in motion and us start to implement those very same things that all of the other museums and cultural centers across southwestern Ontario were doing. I remember reporting to Stacey Littlejohn at the time. She was the person who was placed in charge of me, and I remember her always giving me such wonderful support. And I know she's here tonight, and I want to thank her for that. And I also want to thank Jamie, who I remember had to go and had to open the park and close it every day. And he did a wonderful job keeping that park open for everybody. I also remember one of my fondest memories was Lauren Spicer. And I don't know if he's here tonight, I haven't seen him, but Lauren Spicer mapped out those trails. And as a student, I had the opportunity to go out with Lauren in the bush and help him map out those trails. And his love of nature was absolutely infectious. It was contagious. And what he taught me about trees and nature and birds was phenomenal. And it's something that I still love today and that I'll never forget. I also remember Audrey Littlejohn, and I see Audrey's here tonight. Hats off to you, Audrey. I remember going to work these at that house, and she could put us all to shame working on the grounds. She could do more than I think 2 or 3 of us combined sometimes. I was so impressed with her work ethic and how hard and how much time and effort she put into the organization. I also remember some of those very first meetings, Henry, and us trying to get that focus and try to articulate our goals and map out what we wanted to do and where we wanted to be. And I remember there was a lot of growing pains in those first few years, but everybody persevered and stuck with it. And I remember Henry and Eva in particular, and when I go down to the grounds today, when I go down to the house or when I go to an event, they're still there after all of these years. And I really do, again, tip my hat off to you. You have dedicated so much of your time and your energy and your love of the community and the history into the Tryconnell Heritage Society. I don't think people could understand how much of yourselves you've given to that organization. It truly is impressive, and I commend you for it. In passing, I'd like to say that it was an honor and a privilege being asked to speak here tonight. I see such a dedicated, hardworking, and talented group of people. I still see them here tonight. Ted Gill, I sat with him at dinner. I remember him from the early days as well. You're doing so much good for the community, preserving our rich history. When I go down to the grounds, I'm just in awe of everything that you've accomplished over this past 20 years. You should be so very proud of yourselves. And when I go down there, I'm filled with an overwhelming sense of pride to have been just but a very, very small part of that. Makes me feel very lucky. And congratulations to you all. It really is heartwarming. So, to the Tryconnell Heritage Society, to many, many, many more years of organizing these wonderful events and preserving the history and passing it on to the generations to come. Hear, hear.